So, you want dynamite darts content? Well, Alex Moss and Burton DeWitt have you covered. Love these guys. For bullseyes, bounce-outs, and darting brilliance, keep it right here. You are listening to the weekly Dartscast. Now, I'm Canadian and often get asked how Canadians call out a maximum, a 180? Well, it sounds something like this. 100, eh? T.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the weekly Dartscast, sponsored by Dartwolf. I'm Alex Moss, and alongside me as always, it is the darts statistician himself, Burton DeWitt. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. Loving that it's springtime here in DC. How are you, Alex?
Glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm doing okay, thank you. Episode 302, and sadly we've not got Peter Wright for you to help mark the best ever 2 visits to take out 302 in 6 darts, but we have got 2 great guests for you on the show, one of whom has played Peter Wright in a World Championship and he felt like a fish on the stage. He's just thrown his first 9-darter in a match at the weekend. Jerry Hendriks is going to be calling in, along with the boss of Dunvegan Enterprises, Tommy Gilmour, the manager of several players, including Gary Anderson, who makes his Euro Tour return after 7 years away this weekend. And speaking of the Euro Tour, that is where we're going to start the show this week. Sunday night, Jonny Clayton reclaiming the green jacket, beating Josh Rock 8-6 in the final to win the Austrian Darts Open. A lot to unpack from the weekend. It was a first Euro Tour final for Josh Rock, who whitewashed Michael van Gerwen 7-0 in the semi-finals. But what were your biggest takeaways from the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, we'll start with the 2 players in the final. Let's first start with the final itself. You know, the first 8 legs of that match, they were each averaging well over 105. I mean, Josh Rock was averaging 106 when he was 4-0 down to Jonny Clayton's 110, or 4-1 down. So, you know, he was playing out of his skin and it wasn't enough. He got himself back into that match. They both, their averages actually fell a little under 100 for a little in that match, but in the end, they both averaged just over the ton, and it was just a high-quality final. Jonny Clayton was the better player throughout, and you know what? He was the better player throughout the weekend. His match against Damon Hedda was absolutely brilliant. He overcame Jelle Claesson in a tough match in the second round. Last leg decider broke the throw. Yes, Jelle had a bad final leg, but Jonny Clayton was clinical throughout that, and he was clinical for most of the week. Not as brilliant as he was in the final, not as brilliant as he was in the third round, but he was clinical, and he hit at the right times. And that's why he was able to win a second green jacket, was able to win in Austria for the second time 5 years on. Josh Rock, as you mentioned, his first Euro Tour final, first semifinal even. He had lost a handful of quarterfinals before this weekend. Yes, he was fortunate. He had a resurgent hometown Mensur Suljovic, but resurgent might be pushing it. He was awful in that match against Peter Wright, but won. He wasn't much better against Ricky Evans. He was brilliant against Michael Smith, the world number 1, to set up that match against Josh Rock. But Rock hit that 116 out, and from that point on, there was no coming back for Mensur, and then to whitewash MVG. MVG didn't even have a darted double until the 5th leg of that match. He ended up missing 8 from that point on. But Josh Rock took it to Michael van Gerwen early, and yes, MVG had a chance to get back into that match, but he made too many mistakes, made all the mistakes. Josh Rock didn't make any. And he has now emerged, and we'll come back to Josh Rock later in the show, but he has now emerged as a player who in any venue, in any type of match, is someone to behold. And, you know, yes, that match against Mensur Suljovic wasn't his best, but it was probably his toughest, going against the hometown person. And to be able to hit when he needed to with the crowd against him was really impressive. But as I said, we will talk about Josh Rock in a bit, so I'll leave it on that. As far as other things from the week, I'll be remiss if I don't mention the refereeing. In particular, one specific moment in Andrew Gilding's first match. Gilding, of course, in the seeds for, I don't know if it's the first time in a very long time on the Euro Tour. His match against Matt Campbell, and early on, he thought he had left tops. If you counted up all the scores, he had left tops. If you looked at the scoreboard, I don't mean the one on television, although that one as well, but the one that the markers had on the stage in front of him, it said he had tops. But Russ Bray had miscounted and said that he had 80. And if you go back and listen to that leg, every score throughout that leg, Russ Bray had in fact called correctly up until he said in the penultimate vision, Andrew, you acquire 161. it should have been 121. That's what it said on the scoreboard. That's what all the scores had been. And then after he scored 81 to set up, thought he set up to leave tops, the next visit, Russ Bray again said, Andrew, you require 80, even though the scoreboard said 40 and the correct score should have been 40. Gilding hit tops, but Russ Bray did not call game shot. If you look at the rules, all scores and subtractions made should be checked by the referee, the marker, and the players after each throw, when practicable. This should be done before the player's throw commences. That's Rule 5.4.5. Rule 5.4.6. Errors in arithmetic shall stand as detailed on the scoreboard unless corrected prior to the next throw of the player whose score is in error. Any error in the score can be corrected by the referee at any time until game shot is called in that leg. That last part is key because Russ Bray could, in fact, correct the score even after the next throw. 5.4.9, the actual score required by a player must be showed on the scoreboard clearly visible at board level in front of the players and the referee. 5.4.10, the referee shall act as an umpire in all matters pertaining to these general playing rules when conducting a darts event and shall, if it is necessary, consult with scorers and other officials before announcing any decisions during the course of match play. Reading all that together, what Russ Bray should have done was consult. At the very least, consult when everything else said 40 and the scoreboard, which is the official score, said 40. Instead, all he said was, I called that you require 80 and ordered them to change it to say 80. Didn't change which score was wrong. Just said change it to 80. He did not consult. Everyone else on there was confused. Andrew Gilding was obviously perplexed because he thought he had won the leg. But Russ Bray, instead of consulting, trying to figure it out, went with what he said was the score, even though everything else did not add up to that. He did not consult in a situation that clearly it was necessary to him at least to consult to figure out where the difference was. Russ Bray did not follow the rules of darts, let alone that it was a miscount. Mistakes happen. A referee at least needs to follow the rules and be sure that he knows the rules. And the fact that he didn't is a black eye on that match and a black eye on this tournament. The PDC deserves better and it should be investigated. And I hope the PDC investigates it because we as fans and certainly the players should and do deserve better.
You're absolutely right. And I think Andrew Gilding, in his interview afterwards, said he was miffed. And I think it takes quite a lot for him to be miffed at anything. So we love ourselves a Burton DeWitt rant. And just my thoughts on the weekend itself. And I've got to say, I think the 7-0 jumps off the page straight away for me. And I'll be honest, I was away at the weekend. Sunday evening, I was in London for the Football League Awards. Friend of the show, Andrew Sinclair, kindly offered me an invite to go, and the awards finished at around 10 o'clock. And I said to him, let's see who won the Euro Tour, because we weren't following it during the event. And we were going through the live scores page, got to the semi-finals, Josh Rock 7, Michael van Gerwen 0. We couldn't believe it. And you saw the reaction from Josh after he won that 7th leg, completed the whitewash. He turned to Michael van Gerwen with a look of, did that really just happen? And as you say, we're going to come on to talk about Josh Rock more in our next question. So I'll put him to one side for now. But away from that, the final, Jonny Clayton getting back the green jacket. We asked him on the show a little while ago about the first one that he got in 2018. And he said that he needed to get it framed. I don't know what he's going to do now that he's got 2 in the collection. It is a first Euro Tour title for him since 2018. And you mentioned about that first win that the Ferret had on the Euro Tour on the show recently when we were talking about 100 Euro Tour events and how pivotal that weekend was for him. And you think of all the success that he's had since then, and he's now only doubling his Euro Tour tally of titles. And it looks like he is coming back into some form. We saw him in the Premier League winning those back-to-back nights. He's still in the playoff spots. And as you went through there, he had a tough run of games. Jelle Klaassen beating him 6-5, and that was just to make the final day. And I've got to mention the win against Damon Heta, because it is something that I did manage to see over the weekend, that 106 average and the 1-6-1 finish to win it. Damon Heta turning down the ball for a 1-2-1 to level it up at 5-all. Jonny Clayton steps up, takes out the 1-6-1 to win it 6-4. It was, I'm not sure if Damon Heta is going to do the same thing next time. We know percentages wise, we've had Christopher Kempf on the show, that it is the best option to do. But when that happens to you, maybe you'll think twice about doing it next time. But aside from that, we had The handicapper's nightmare, Daryl Gurney, getting to the semi-finals, a good run for him, and he has been qualifying for almost all these Euro Tour events this year, coming through the qualifiers, but the draws have been pretty rotten for him. He's had Stephen Bunting twice, he had him again at the weekend, Andrew Gilden I think he's had, Gabriel Clemens in there as well, so some tough draws that he's had in the first round of these events, and he wasn't at his best over the weekend. His averages were around the low to mid-90s for the most part, but he got the job done and he beat some top quality players. He beat Andrew Gilden, he beat Danny Noppert, Stephen Bunting, Luke Humphreys, the top seed, and there were some fairly comfortable wins in there. And okay, you can look at the opponents and say they were nowhere near their best, and I'll mention that again in a moment, but those games can be hard to win because when you've got nothing coming back at you and you are expecting a hard game, you've got to put that to one side and get the job done. And as I say, that's what Daryl did for the most part and almost made it to the final in the end. And just lastly, a word for Mensa Suljovic. It was his home event. He got in as the highest ranked Austrian player on the tour and beat Peter Wright, a game that I didn't watch, but I don't want to watch after looking at the averages there. But got to say, he showed his class the next day, the 97 average to beat Michael Smith 6-2 in the last 16. And okay, it's not as frequently coming out every single time as it was in the past, but you can see that Mensa on his day, he's still capable of beating the top players.
Yes, he's not just capable, but did, beating, as you mentioned, the top two in the world. Now we move on to that question of the week, hinted at by both of us, but deals with Josh Rock, his first Euro Tour final. Of course, he won a title last year. Will Josh Rock move into the world's top 16 before the end of 2023?
Well, before I answer this, I've just got to first of all say apologies because our Twitter poll for these questions, they usually do run for 7 days, but for some reason I forgot to change it. So it did only run for 1 day. So we do have the results for this poll already. And we did get a lot of feedback, even though it was only running for 1 day. And 61% of our listeners saying that, yes, Josh Rock will be in the top 16 before the end of 2023 and 39% going with no. And we had a few of our listeners get in touch with some comments as well. We had J. Page Rochester saying possibly that destruction of MVG was something else. Kids got game. President Camacho saying his reaction after beating MVG was priceless. And Tom saying that he'll reach the final of either the match play or the Grand Prix and get into the top 16. So that's what some of our listeners are coming back to us with. And the state of play at the moment, you look at it, we're coming towards the end of April. And Josh, the run at the final at the weekend, it's put him up to number 30. He's gone above Raymond van Barneveld and Mervyn King on that list. And he is still in the second year of his tour card. So that figure that he's got, the prize money he's got on that ranking, that's not going to go down. It's only going to go up. And the top 16 at the moment, it looks like a tough ask, 160 grand off of Dave Chisnall. But we've got a lot of big events coming up during the second half of the year. And Josh Rock pretty much is going to be in all of them. You've got the match play, the Grand Prix, the Players' Championship finals, European Championships, the Grand Slam. I don't think he's officially in that at the moment, but as the World Youth Champion, he should be in. So he is in that event, to correct myself there. But looking at the provisional rankings going into the World Championship, he's around number 26 and he is around 60 grand off. And with all the prize money that's going to drop off from those majors 2 years ago, it's going to push him up there. And I think that's where he can cash in, because the majors, that's not an area that we've seen him have a deep run yet. And it seems harsh to say, but the World Championships, he did make the last 16, but there's a lot of prize money to win in these big events, as we know, and we've not seen him get to a quarterfinal yet, but I do think it is only a matter of time, and we're going to see him make debuts in some of these events, the match play, the Grand Prix. In terms of the stage, he's in the top 16 on the Pro Tour, so he's going to be in pretty much all the Euro Tours now for the rest of the year, and a lot more stage time for him this year. And we saw what he did last year with a limited amount of stage time until the back end of the year. He did start to make some strides. So I think we're going to see him get into that top 16. And the question is before the end of 2023. So that means he does have to do it before the World Championships. And yeah, 60 grand, he's going to need to have a decent run in one of the majors. And I think he's going to do it, possibly even two. I think he's going to go deep, make a couple of quarterfinals, maybe go further in one of them. So I'm going to go with the majority of our listeners. I'm going to say that Josh Rock, before the World Championship, before the end of 2023, will be in that top 16.
Yeah, I mean, so it is, as you mentioned, just under 60,000 right now between where he provisionally would be for the World Championships and where number 16 is. But let's look at the difference between number 16 and number 15. That's nearly another 40,000. He is just under 100,000 from number 15. And he doesn't have to get to number 15 to be in the top 16. But if he doesn't catch number 15, it means he has to catch every single person ahead of him. Some of those you'd expect him to. Some of those I'd expect that by the time we're starting the world match play, he'll have caught, if not right after that. I think he will catch. I mean, yes, Krzysztof Ratajski's playing better, but he's not playing better than Josh Rock. That's 2,000 pounds and change to catch him. Winning your board would almost, at one players championship, would almost catch him. Stephen Bunting is another 8,000 ahead of that. Martin Schindler is only 19,000 ahead of him. Schindler's playing well, but not as well as Josh Rock. So, if you look at it that way, he's going to catch some of these players. But Gary Anderson's playing really well. Andrew Gilding has won a major already this year. Ryan Searle, Chris Dobie, both playing really well. All he has to not make the top 16 is for one of those players to maintain that lead. And that seems fairly likely. Now, could he win 100,000 pounds between now and the World Championships? Yes. But that's 100,000 that he needs to make up on Damon Hedda, on Ross Smith, on Joe Cullen, or Dave Chisnell, one of those players. And that's going to require him to make not just a deep run, but probably at least a final at one of the televised events. But he's good enough. He won a title last year. He won a televised title if you count the World Youth Championships. That doesn't count for the rankings. It's not a senior competition, but it still is experience on that big stage. And as you mentioned, he'll be playing in all the European tours. That's going to be a lot of opportunities to make up ground on the people ahead of him. But I don't know if he's yet ready to win a television tournament, which means if he's going to get in the top 16, he's going to have to do it by reaching a major ranking final and having a lot of other very big results, or at the very least winning a pair, at least a pair, if not a trio of these European tours. It's 30,000 pounds for winning one of them. It's possible. It's definitely doable. And it becomes a little bit easier for him to move in the top 16 after the World Championships because of all the money that's at stake at the World Championships and the fact that he didn't have a tour card 2 years ago. He's not defending anything at the Alexandra Palace this December. He absolutely can move into the top 16 before the end of the year, but it really is a tougher task than just 60,000 pounds might sound, because that's 60,000 pounds that he's having to catch on everyone just to get to number 16, and another 40,000 if just one of those people stays ahead of him. And I think the way it's going, it's more likely than not that at least one of those people will stay ahead of him. And I just think that it's asking him to catch up on Damon Hedda, to catch up on Joe Cullen, to catch up on Ross Smith or Dave Chisnell is a little bit too much unless he wins a television event. So I'm going to say he's not, but I'm definitely ready to be proven wrong.
That's a fair point. We shall see. Well, we've been talking about the Euro Tour. We've got the return of one of the all-time greats, Gary Anderson, playing on the Euro Tour this weekend. First Euro Tour event in 7 years. Let's find out a little bit more about why it's the time for Gary Anderson to come back this weekend. Here's our chat with his manager. He is the boss of Dunvegan Enterprises, Tommy Gilmour. I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the owner of Dunvegan Enterprises, Tommy Gilmour. Thanks for the time, Tommy. How are you doing?
I'm doing absolutely wonderful.
Great to hear, and thanks for the time, and lots to get to, but first of all, excitement's building among darts fans to the return of one of the players in your stable, Gary Anderson, to the European Tour this weekend. First time in 7 years that Gary's back on the Euro Tour. How is he feeling ahead of playing on Friday?
He's really looking forward to, because as much as probably European tournaments have missed, Gary to a certain extent has missed it because of the calendar that they have now. We pick and choose because a lot of the competitions are in godforsaken places, and it takes too much out of your life. But you've got to fly from Bristol to Amsterdam and Amsterdam to somewhere else. So we've tended to pick out the tournaments where you can fly somewhere and get a car or a bus or whatever just in the one go. So we're trying to cut down on the travelling time. So that's been the main problem why he's not been playing.
7 years, that's a long time. During that period, Gary's obviously still been busy with the Premier League, a lot of other events, the World Series, but I'm sure he'd often get asked when he's coming back to the Euro Tour. So what was your reaction when he said, let's give some of these events a go again this year?
Well, I knew that was going to be the place, because to keep Gary interested, he's got a young family and he's got his own business as well. But the idea of trying to marry everything up, it's very important, because I mean, his two kids are under 10, so it's important he has a family life as well as a darts life. And if we can marry it about, and especially him not doing the Premier League, which is people like to see him in the Premier League, but if we want to keep Gary Anderson as much as we can, then we've got to make sure that we plan out how he's going to play throughout the year.
Well, we'll come back to Gary and some of the other players in your stable and get on to you being a darts manager, but you've had a very long career in boxing as well. I was having to read earlier, and boxing that runs through the family for you. First of all, your granddad, Jim, boxed for Great Britain in the 1920 Olympics. What stories did you hear about that time?
Well, the thing is, that was great to do that, because remember that was the first Olympics after the First World War. So the team, is only a small size of what it would be today. But for him to box it in that was great. He was also the champion of Great Britain and Denmark, because in those days, if you beat the champion of Denmark, then you became the champion. So he'd done a lot of great things as an amateur. Then he went into the professional game and became a boxing promoter.
And your dad, Tommy Senior, as well, he managed boxers as well, so the Gilmour name has always been involved in boxing. Yeah. I'm guessing you're always going to follow in their footsteps.
Well, the thing is, when you consider that we were managing and promoting fighters, before the Boxing Board of Control was even founded, so we go back further than the Boxing Board of Control. So that's quite an achievement. And for my grandfather, he had people. Mickey Duff was one of his matchmakers in the early part of his career, and then he promoted a lot of the big fights in Scotland, both in public venues and football stadiums and so forth. So he done well, but then my dad came through. My dad was a good boxer, but had a problem with his eyes, so he couldn't box. So he ended up becoming a manager. And actually, believe it or not, he managed his first boxer when he was only 14 years of age. And he used to spar with his boxers and everything else, so he was very successful through the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, because, one time he had managed more British champions than any other manager in Britain, and coming from a small nation of 5 million people, it was quite an achievement. He had people like Charlie Hill and Chick Calderwood and Peter Keenan, and, there was quite a number, all the main names in Scotland, either boxed. And one of my grandfather's shows I was managed by my dad. So then I took up, when I was 21, I started promoting shows on my own right, separate from my dad. He was the manager, and but I promoted fights, and we used to have terrible ding-dongs, because he always wanted too much money for his boxers, and I was saying, no, you can't do it. So it was a good way of learning that, it's not like today where father and son work together. We fought like cat and dog. It was a great grounding.
Well, let's get on to the darts then, and a name synonymous with both boxing and darts, Barry Hearn. When you told him that you were retiring, he mentioned darts and possibly getting involved. What was your first reaction when he suggested that to you?
I thought it was mad, because he says to me, I said, I'm going to retire, because Barry and I have been friends for in excess of 30 years. And I said, I'm going to retire. He says, he's too young to retire. I said, no, I want to just go and do other things. He went, there's a great player coming through from Scotland, Gary Anderson. He says, I think you should meet him. I said, what does he do? He says, he's a darts player. I said, what do I know about darts? And that was how it started. He said, no, he said, you've promoted all these World Championship fights and managed all the different grades of boxers up to World Champion. He says it's about what you know about sport and about business and so forth. So eventually, he kind of persuaded me to meet Gary Anderson, and I had to look him up on the internet because I didn't even know what Gary Anderson looked like. But within 20 minutes, we took a shine to each other, and we've been there ever since. You know, he said, "I'm happy for you to marry me." I said, "I'm happy to take your career in hand." And he's went on and won 2 World Championships, a couple of Premier Leagues. You know, everybody that knows much more about darts than me has heard of Gary Anderson, and even those who know less than me have heard of Gary Anderson. So it's been an absolutely blinding journey, and he's, you know, for all people see and hear Gary, you know, he's got a degree in moaning. I mean, Gary moans for Britain, but he's possibly one of the best clients that I've ever looked after. You know, we very seldom have disagreements, but we never have fallouts. You know, and it's been an absolute pleasure to manage him all the way through, and I've had a load of fun. But in saying that, at the early days, going back when I decided to become involved, Barry Hearn says, "Oh, it'll be great." He says, "You'll have loads of fun." He says, "We'll do this and you'll do that." And then I done a radio interview one day, and I went, "Barry Hearn tells lies." I said, "He told me there would be no pressure, and there would be nothing else." And he phoned me up and he went, "What are you saying? I'm telling lies." I said, "Well, you told me there would be no pressure." I said, "My stomach churns every Thursday." I said, "I just worry about what's happening with Gary Anderson at that time, Michael Smith and Ian White." I said, "I just worry about everybody." He said, "But that's your enjoyment," he says. And it's been, I've had a blast at time.
One of the highest pressure situations in darts is a World Championship final, and we saw at the start of 2015 Gary become a world champion for the first time, beating Phil Taylor in a last set. You've been involved in a lot of big nights in boxing, but what was that night like for the final and seeing Gary lift that title after such a dramatic final?
Oh, that to be somebody, you know, as iconic as Phil, because I had been disappointed the previous time when I ended up losing to Adrian, because it looked as if we were heading to win the championship. But then when you go on to win it and to beat Phil, that was just blew us away. You know, we were in cloud 9 for weeks after that. It was something special up there with some of the great nights when our fighters have won world championships at the box, and that was special.
Gary then joins a small list of players to defend the title the following year, and I remember chatting to him and yourself. You were there as well, the media day for the House of Flying Arrows film, which followed Gary around before and during that World Championship, and what a story it turned out for them, the main character going all the way and winning the title again.
Aye, but it's not finished, because he's going to win another world title. I'm absolutely positive that Gary Anderson will win another world championship before he retires.
We've seen this year, haven't we, the form that he's shown on TV, winning a title as well, and he's starting to play in some of these Euro Tour events again. It looks like he has got that hunger for the game again, and practicing a lot more with Ryan Searle as well.
Yep. You know, but as I said, because of the extra practice, and I'm having done as much travelling because of the World Series and the Premier League, he was able to, you know, to sit down and do all these, you know, he's done a few exhibitions, but playing in the tournaments, and you know, because like everything else, we go through bad parts in our careers, and you say, "Oh, why am I doing it? And I've got a business and I'm comfortable and everything." But Gary always had this hunger, but very few people, when I would tell him, said, "Don't worry, Gary will be okay." When he had that blip for a year or two, we knew what the problems were. He had problems with his back, with problems with the travelling, possibly. Maybe that was the back problem, on and off aeroplanes and so forth. But in-house, we knew that Gary was going to come again. And when he phoned up and he said, he was speaking to Stephanie, my daughter, who arranges all his diaries and stuff like that. And we had a talk with Gary and with Rachel, Gary's wife, and we knew, and we were planning last year what tournaments he was going to go to this year. And the minute that it was Gary's idea to sit down and we got it right, we knew that everything was going to be okay, but we just had to have a wee bit of faith. And when it came to the hard work, Gary stepped up to the plate, and as you say, all these nights he's playing darts with Ryan Ciro, him and Ryan got on great. They can really, I think that each have brought the other one back on, and Gary's laughing and enjoying the fun again.
Good to see, and it's not just Gary that you've managed over the years. You touched on a few players that you've managed before, Michael Smith and Ian White, and you've got a fairly small stable of players at Dunvegan. So what is it you look for in a player when you're thinking of bringing them in?
They want to work, but we've been doing this for decades, and even although I don't know anything about darts, it's about attitude and getting them to realise this is a job, but you've got to enjoy it, because there's so much in it. So that it's the commitment. Because with Gary, it was very easy because Gary had a proper job, 8 in the morning out in the building sites and so forth. A lot of these players, they've never known anything other than playing darts. And it was to try and make sure that you got all these attitudes together, and you're not going to be the world champion immediately, But when Michael Smith was with us, Michael won the Youth World Championships, and you could see that Michael's a great player. Okay, I don't manage him anymore, but that doesn't mean to say he's not a great player. And the years of hard work and dedication that he's put in, it's paid a dividend. And you can see that with the other boys coming through, like Cameron Menzies. He's coming through. And he's in the top 64 and the Pro Tour and so forth. And that's good, because he's starting to gain confidence, because he has the same anxiety problems that other players have had, and I had to help. And you've always got to keep talking away to, because he doesn't believe how good he is, but he is good.
Yeah, I was going to mention Cameron Menzies, another Scot that you've got in your stable. As you mentioned, he's now in that top 64, still only on his second year with a scorecard, and he's got a character. He's exciting to watch. What's it been like managing Cammy?
But it makes me smile in the morning, because everything, if I could show you, every time he has a bad game, he sends me a text within 10 minutes, and he's suicidal. It should be the Samaritans he should be phoning rather than me. He's suicidal. And then an hour later, he'll send me another text. That's me, I'm okay now. Because you've always got to keep talking to him and so forth. But he's such a character. He's the sort of character, in the years going forward that's really needs, because he wears his heart in his sleeve. He's so passionate about everything he does, and I think with Cammy, I think maybe in the next 2 or 3 years he'll come good and be working himself up the ladder.
Forward to seeing that. And the third tour card holder currently that you've got in your stable, Jamie Clark, he's not quite had the same amount of success, but I was just looking, he's only 26, so how has he found life on the tour so far?
He's okay. As again, this is his first time. He'd never really taken it up seriously, and it was only through bumping into Gary at one of the exhibitions, and he ended up, he was with a friend of mine, Andrew McCardle, that coaches some of some of the young players in Scotland, and he says, "We'll go and see Tommy," and we just go on. And I think that the idea that they can pick up the phone, the same as the boxers can, they can pick up the phone at any time. Because they're kept, everything they're needing is there for them, and that's important. And if they know that they're every bit, Jamie Clark's every bit as important to me as Gary Anderson. And people say, "Oh, you can't say that. Gary Anderson's at the very top." But when he started off and came into and he had to start at number 128 and work his way up after having threw away dozens of arrows into the lakeside pond when he had some disasters in the BDO. And what pleases me about Jamie is Jamie he's quite consistent. He's scoring. His scoring has been okay, but he's just not been getting the wee bit of luck. You've got to get by that first round in the Pro Tour, but he's had some nightmare. He's been drawn against like Michael Smith or Gerwin Price or Michael Van Gerwen. We're not getting the chance, and it's just as he's going on. But in the next, I think that Jamie's probably, certainly, I would say 2 years to be start to see. He'll be a late developer and probably get there by the time he's 30.
Just lastly, we should touch on some of the other players in your stable as well that don't have tour cards. And Mark McGeaney, we are going to see him on TV in the World Seniors Masters in a few months. You've also got Chris Quantock, Matty Dennant, Ryan Hogan.
Yeah.
What are the goals for them for the rest of the year?
Get their tour card. That's all we talk about. I'm not worried. They do the challenge tour and so forth, but with Mark had just lost a bit of confidence in what he was doing, and he was putting pressure upon himself. So we would just keep meeting him and having a cup of coffee and talking through, and nothing. The idea that he's with somebody that we don't put pressure on them. Oh, you must do well because of this or that, because if they're happy, we will do well, because it will show through. And Mark McGeaney he's a perfect example, because he's done very well in that, the Modus tournament and so forth, and as you say, he's going into the playing the seniors. Ryan Hogarth, who was just a wee bit unlucky, not to get his tour card, same with Matt Dennant. Matt's a super player. I love watching him, and as for Chris Quantock, he's playing that Modus tournament this week, and he's sitting in the middle of the table, but he had a lot of problems, and because of the not being able to get doctors and so forth, he had a problem with his elbow, which and also with his wrist. So it was taken, but he's starting to throw his numbers again. So I'm quite optimistic about the young boys coming through, But the most important with them, more than anything, when they come with Dunvegan, they've got to kind of work hard, and because we encourage it, because there is life-changing amounts of money out there that will change their lives much more than that will change, because we've been running a business for 40 odd years. So, but these are young boys, with young kids and families coming through, and it's a pleasure just because their success is my success.
Well, Tommy, it's a pleasure to chat to you. We do appreciate your time, and best of luck to Gary on the Euro Tour this weekend, and to all your players for.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll all be sitting there with our mobiles to see how Gary's doing, So he's the changing him, because you see the changing attitude, because he doesn't like people putting undue pressure. He has everything mapped out. You can see that even when he goes away, the way he's going to have an iron board and an iron in his room, so that he gets the creases right, and and his playing shirt and so forth. He's his wee idiosyncrasy, but they work for him.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing that shirt with no creases on this Friday. Thanks for the time, Tony, and wish you all the best for the rest of the year.
Okay, not a problem. Delighted. Thanks again.
Free beer, anyone? Now that I've got your attention, the weekly Dartscast are excited to be partnering up with the guys at Beer52 to offer our listeners a free case of beers. Head on over to beer52.com/darts and cover the postage cost of £5.95 to claim your free case of beers from our good friends at Beer52. I've just got on board with Beer52, and as a member each month, they send me a case of unique and varied beers from a different part of the world. Imagine that. Each month trying out beers from a different country. In the last 10 years, Beer52 have been to 40 different countries, including the US, Australia and Germany, and they've also included a range of breweries in the UK too. So, to claim your free case of beers, go to beer52.com/darts. Thank you for listening, and enjoy the darts and enjoy your beers, and let's get back to the rest of the show.
Thanks again to Tommy for joining us. Now to some news over the weekend, and we saw on Saturday Adrian Lewis posting on Twitter that he is taking a break from the tour. He posted on Twitter, "Dear all, in particular my fans, I feel that your loyalty deserves an explanation for my absence from tournaments. After 20 plus years, I feel I need a break from the professional circuit now." So what was your reaction to the news?
I mean, obviously there was something going on. We can't pretend. I mean, we didn't know why he had skipped the previous weekend, but we knew something was going on when he didn't enter. In fact, actually, it's the last 2 weekends now. And I don't really know what to say. You know, we haven't seen much of Adrian Lewis this year. He's only played the first 6. He's only won 2 matches. Granted, he averaged over a ton against Luke Woodhouse, who's been one of the breakout players so far this year, and then averaged over a ton in losing to Raymond van Barneveld. So, he played well at the 4th Players' Championship event, but that's the only time we've seen him get out of the first round. We've seen him lose to some people who've been struggling this year. Richie Edhouse has been struggling. Mervyn King has been struggling. He lost in the first round, not playing very well to either of them, losing in 8 legs to Edhouse, losing 6 legs to 3 to Mervyn King. I think that was Mervyn King's first win in a Players' Championship event this year. There's been something going on with his game. Last year was certainly a bounce back year. He got back into the television events. It looked like for a while, it looked like he might move back into the top 32. He was provisionally there at times, but he didn't manage to crack it. But at the start of this year, it just wasn't hitting. And I don't know what's going on with Adrian Lewis. Only Adrian Lewis knows what's going on with Adrian Lewis. On his day, he's one of the best players in the world, but his day has become much more infrequent with passing time. And so far this year, we haven't seen it. And 20 years, as he said, is a long time. I think he's being honest. That is a long time to be at the top of the game. For most of that, he was at the top of the game. From about 2006 to 2018, he was one of the top players every year. He won 2 world titles. He made it to number 2 in the world. He made it within a fraction of catching Phil Taylor for world number 1. Before the 2013 World Championships. If he had done well at the Players' Championship finals heading into the 2014 World Championship, into the 2013 World Championships, he could have become world number 1. But he, maintaining that level for so long is difficult. And at some point, the losses and the travel and the stress gets to everyone. It could be getting to James Wade this year. Wade's been out there for nearly as long, and now James Wade is threatening to drop out of the top 16 for the first time since the World Match Play in 2006. So it's tough to maintain this level, and a break might just be what he needs. But at the same time, what will a break mean to his career? As things currently stand, he is not even in the same stratosphere as the people contending for the World Championships. He's not anywhere near getting into the back into the top 32. He's 7,000 pounds nearly behind the last person in the World Championship spots. If he's going to take some time off, it's going to be difficult for him to make that up. Granted, he could go and win a title. He can go and win a couple. But maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he just needs some time off. Maybe he'll come back in August, rejuvenated. Maybe he takes the entire year off. Maybe he never comes back. That's something that I'm sure he's going through in his mind. What does he want to accomplish? Does he still have things left to accomplish in this game? Does he still want to deal with the stress? Only Adrian Lewis knows those answers, if anyone does. And if he's taking a break, maybe he doesn't know those answers. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. We'll find out more as time goes on. If we see him come back and we see him performing like he was last year, like he was 5-6 years ago when he was at his best, then we know that maybe he just needed to clear his mind. If he takes a little bit longer, then maybe we'll have to ask some other questions. If he comes back and nothing's changed, then the questions will shift, and they'll go back to what we were asking a few years ago when we wondered whether Adrian Lewis would ever be back to his best. I think only Adrian Lewis can know, if anyone knows, what the purpose of this break is, and hopefully while he's taking that break, he'll figure out the answers if he doesn't already.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And I've got to say, when the news came out, it was surprising. But as you say, he has been away from the tour for a little while already. We've not seen Adrian Lewis play since the third Pro Tour weekend, Players Championship 5 and 6. And that was back on March the 11th, March the 12th, around that time. And so we've not seen him in the last two Players Championship weekends. He withdrew from the Euro Tour event that he qualified for, the third one. So already he's had over a month off, and we don't want to speculate on the reason behind it. I think every player, they deserve that privacy. If it does involve a private matter why he is taking time away from the game, we don't know. And we don't know how long this break is going to be for him, whether it's going to be for a few months and he comes back after the summer, or, as you say, he takes the rest of the year off and comes back next year. I mean, these are the questions that we don't know the answer to. We know that Adrian Lewis, he's not going to have to worry about his tour card for next year. That's guaranteed, but that's probably at the moment the least of his concerns. And I think the important thing is for Adrian Lewis to take as much time as he needs so that when or if he feels ready to come back and compete again, that he can. And it would be a shame for darts if this was to be the end of Adrian Lewis's career, because what a career it's been. It's been one of the best that we've seen in the PDC. He's a back-to-back world champion. He's won multiple majors, the 9 darters on TV. There's been a lot of success in there, and he is still one of the most popular players in the game. I think if you asked any darts fan, probably more casual fans that follow the game, and you ask them to mention darts players, a lot of them will still mention Adrian Lewis, and that's someone that's not been at the top level of the game for a few years now, but the name, the star power, that is still there, even though he has had that lean period now for a little while. And that just shows you what he achieved during his pomp, because he still attracts that attention from a lot of darts fans. And yeah, I think the news, it was surprising, but as I say, he has been away from the tour for a month or so now, so questions were probably being asked, and I think it's good that Adrian has come out and said, this is what's happening, I'm having a break away from the game. And it probably stops people asking him what's going on, because I'm sure there have been a lot of people getting in touch with him, a lot of his fans wanting to know why he's not playing in the events, and now he has come out and said that he is taking this time away, and we'll see if he does come back. There's going to be a lot of downtime for him now to think about where he wants to go with his career, because as he said in a lot of interviews recently and in the past, while he's been around that top 32, just out the top 32, he's always come out and said, I can get back to where I was before. I can get back, not just the top 16, top 8, top 4, challenging for titles, challenging for world championships. Well, that's something that we've not seen materialise over the last few years. And now there's this period now for Adrian, while he is away from competition, to think, can I do that? What is the hunger? What is the goals I want to achieve in this game? And do I really want to get back into it? Because 20 years in any sport is a long time. And to have that success and want to come back and rebuild your career, it's going to take a lot to do, I think.
Well, let's move on and talk about the Premier League. Hard to believe that it's already night 13, the season nearly 3/4 over, at least the regular season nearly 3/4 over, as they head to the first direct arena in Leeds. 4 matches, as we always will predict here, starting with the quarterfinal between Michael Smith, who goes against Chris Dobie, who, he could average 132 and still lose the way the Premier League's going. How do you see this one?
Well, before I get onto that, just a word on last week's picks, and yeah, not good reading for me. Burton 7-1 to you, and a score I've got to admit I don't mind seeing, actually, because it does remind me of when Colchester won 7-1 at Norwich City a long time ago now. But 3 out of 4 for you, Burton. 2 correct scores as well, so well done on that. I was 1 out of 4, just a 1 point for me for getting Going Price to beat Michael Smith. But onto these picks, and we've seen Michael Smith drop out of the top 4. First time that he's been out of the playoff spots at the end of a night since week 2. And I put the tweet out last week. We've had 3 years in a row that the current world number 1 didn't qualify for the playoffs in the Premier League. Van Gogh in 2020, Price 2021. I don't know if it was Peter Wright or Going Price who was number 1 at the time, but last year both of them missed out anyway. But are we going to see it happen for a 4th year in a row? And there are still 4 nights, 3 more after this week to go. But this kind of feels important, especially with how the schedule works out. You've got Michael Smith being on first. It's a chance to move back into that top 4 with a win before everyone else plays. And I think psychologically that would be a boost for him. But on the other side, if he loses, he knows he's going to go into next week still out that top 4, and the gap could open up. So I think for that reason, I've got to back Michael Smith to get the job done here. I know Chris Dobie, he's on a losing run. It's going to come to an end at some point. It probably will here now that I've backed against him. But I'm going to go with Michael Smith to win this one 6-3.
Yeah, and probably Chris Dobie will average 700 in losing that match 6-3. It's at some point, Chris Dobie's going to get some luck again. He's only gotten out of the first round 3 times, and 2 of those times he ended up making the final. But, if you go back, he lost 5 consecutive first-round matches after winning the title on the first night. He's now lost 4 consecutive first rounds. At some point, he's going to get some luck. Michael Smith has a lot to play for here. He's already lost his 2 first-round matches to Chris Dobie. He lost, of course, that night 8. And he, when they did it based on their ranking up until that point of the season, of course, he lost the previous week as well. And I just feel like Chris Dobie's going to make it 3 in a row on the Premier League stage against Michael Smith. It'll end up being 3/4 of the first round matches he's won, but a win's a win. And I'm going to go for Dobie to get the upset 6-4.
Second quarterfinal of the night, and it is Michael Van Gerwen against Peter Wright. How do you see this one going?
Wright, we both were talking about how it looked like Peter Wright was finally getting it back together, but he did average 87 in the Premier League last night, and that was still 10 points better than he did against Menzer Sulovic in Austria. There's just something not clicking with Peter Wright. Even when it looks like things are starting to get better, he takes 3 steps back. Could this be the night where things rebound? Absolutely. Am I going to predict that he's going to rebound against Michael Van Gerwen, who's going to be hungry to move back atop the table? No. 6 legs to 2 to the big green machine. We don't do jokers anymore, but this will be my season joker.
Yeah, I think that's a good shout. And again, like the race for the top 4 with the schedule in these quarterfinals, a win for MVG would put him back above Going Price at the top before Going Price plays in the next game. And I've got down here as well with Peter Wright. It does feel like 1 step forward, 2 steps back, because he did start to put in some good averages in the Premier League. And then, as you say, last week, the sub-90 average in Rotterdam, and we both even backed Peter Wright to win that game against Dimitri van den Berg, but his average dropped even lower on the Euro Tour. I think on the PDC website, they said that it was his lowest ever average in a game on the Euro Tour, 78 average. And we know Peter Wright, he can pull out results against Michael Van Gerwen, and he's done it in the past, even at times when you maybe least expect it, but I can't see that happening here. I had 6-2 again, but like you did, but I'm going to go a bit more one-sided. I'm going to go 6-1 to the green man to go back to the top of the table.
I think that's the first time one of us went 6-2 and the other was like, no, that's not one-sided enough, especially in the Premier League. Third match, the Welsh derby in the famous Welsh town of Leeds. Gerwen Price, top of the table now after winning after reaching the final last week, goes against Jonny Clayton, who is currently 4th, although he might not be 4th by the time the match starts. How do you see this one?
Well, if my first 2 results have gone the way I've predicted, and if you listen each week to this show, you know that almost certainly they haven't. But let's say they have. Going Price started the night top. He's now going to be 2nd, and Jonny Clayton started the night 4th in the playoffs. He's now going to be 5th. So based on that, it's an important game for both of them. More so for Jonny Clayton to pick up the 2 points here. And Going Price didn't play on the Euro Tour at the weekend, but he thrashed Jonny Clayton 6-1 in the Premier League last week in Rotterdam. But Clayton bounced back from that disappointment, won the Euro Tour at the weekend. So this is a tough one to call, and I think we're going to go all the way here. I think we're going to go to 11 legs, and I'm going to go with Jonny Clayton's Nicky. It might not be a 1-6-1 finish, but I think there's going to be a tricky little finish there, a single for the ball, maybe an 86, 18 ball to get over the line in this one, 6-5.
If you're going Jonny Clayton to win it with a bullseye and 18, surely it would be 18 double 18 bull as Jonny Clayton's trademark shot. It's one of the toughest matches that we've had in the Premier League. Both of them are just playing phenomenally. I mean, we've been talking about Gerwyn Price for some time now. Maybe he's finally dropped back down to earth. You know, 2 of those matches last week, he was barely over 100, and then God knows what he was throwing in the final. But he's still the best player in the world. Jonny Clayton, he's obviously righted the ship recently, and winning on the European tour is only going to help with that. But I think Gezi is a man on a mission right now. He might say he doesn't want to finish top. He might mean that, but that just makes him all the more dangerous. Jonny Clayton will play well, but that won't matter. Gerwyn Price is going to win this 6-3 and continue his push towards topping the table.
Final quarter-final for us to pick then, and it's the winner of last week's Premier League night in Rotterdam, Nathan Aspinall against Dimitri van den Bergh. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, it's Dimitri finally ended his long losing streak last week, but he didn't look all that impressive in doing that, and he wasn't much better when he went against the eventual night winner, Nathan Aspinall, in that semifinal. I think at some point Dimitri van den Bergh will play better than he has been. I'm not going to pick it right now. I think Nathan Aspinall, his mind's on the playoffs. It's a 5-way race for 4 spots. I don't know who's going to end up winning that race, but I think Nathan Aspinall is going to take every chance he can to get the points that he needs, and this night will be one of those nights. 2 points to Nathan Aspinall, 6 legs to 4.
Yeah, we spoke earlier in the season about Dimitri van den Bergh's long winning run that he had against Nathan Aspinall, and they played consecutive weeks in the Premier League earlier on in the season. Dimitri won, and we were talking about it the following week, but Nathan then goes and breaks the streak, and he beat him again last week on the way to winning the title. So he's got a good little run going against Dimitri now, and it was an important extra 2 points for winning that final against Gerwyn Price last week, because it did put Nathan Aspinall into that top 4 and up to 3rd in the table. And as you touched on, Dimitri snapping his own losing run in the Premier League, beating Peter Wright, wasn't entirely convincing. And you go to the start of this week, Dimitri is 8 points off the top 4 going into it. So I think he's going to need a final minimum here just to stay in touch. But realistically, I think a title is the only thing that's going to change the view that this is, you said, a 5-horse race for 4 spots. I think Van Gerwen and Price, they're both there now. I think this is now a 3-horse race for those last 2 playoff spots between Nathan Aspinall, Jonny Clayton and Michael Smith. And I've backed Smith and Clayton both to win. So Aspinall is going to be under pressure for this one, but I think he's going to deal with it. And you said 6-4. I'll go a little bit more one-sided. I'm going to go 6-3 to the Asp.
And now we'll move on to our second interview of the week, and it's with Jerry Hendriks.
I'm pleased to say I'm joined by the 2-time PDC World Championship qualifier and the 9-dart man himself, Jerry Hendriks. Thanks for the time, Jerry. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing really, really fine at this moment, Alex. Thanks for having me. Really looking forward to being on your show, of course.
It's great to have you on, and there is only one place to start, and that is with the weekend just gone and a special moment for you, throwing a 9-dart finish in the Musketeers Masters in the Netherlands. We saw the video of you taking out the 141, the celebration after, and am I right in saying that was your first 9-darter in an official game?
Yeah, that's true. I've been playing darts for a long time now. It's been 25 years already. So I can remember that was almost 21 years ago. I missed my first 9-darter on a double 12, and all those years it just didn't go in. So that's really strange that I'm throwing my first 9-darter on age 34. Really happy with the result, of course. That you could see it in the video. A little bit of a strange reaction and strange happiness again, but yeah, that's just me.
And I think you said on Facebook, and you said it there, you'd missed many chances in the past for a 9-darter. So what did it mean to finally achieve that and throw the perfect leg in a game?
Yeah, just feels so fulfilling, actually, to hit a 9-darter. I didn't know that feeling because I never hit one in an official game. Of course, practice is another thing. I've hit a couple of them, a lot of them in practice sessions, but yeah, it's just one of those things that didn't quite fit well in an official game. And in an official game, if you never hit one, you start thinking quite soon. After you hit the 5th or the 6th treble already, you start thinking, yeah, perhaps maybe a 9-darters in this game. And then if you overthink it, that's the problem with darts. So yeah, all of a sudden I didn't overthink it and I just threw the 1-for-1. And then I realized, I hit a 9-darter in this moment. So that's why the outburst came.
Good times. Well, you once famously said that you felt like a fish on the stage after a match at Ali Pali. So what animal would you say you felt like after that 9-darter went in?
I still feel like a fish. Still feel like a fish on stage. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that comment really, came into the news quite a lot over the years still on this moment. Although it's I think 6 years ago or something. But yeah, I just feel happy, and on that moment, standing next to Peter Wright, I feel really happy with getting to the Worlds in that moment, and I felt okay. So that's why the hilarious mistake came in the language barrier.
Well, we'll come on to that a bit later on, but we should mention as well that, of course, you got the 9-darter at the weekend, but you also went on to win that tournament as well. So where do you feel your game is right now? Does the 9-darter show that you are coming into some good form?
Yeah, that's quite a strange thing because I chose to do a sabbatical year this year. I didn't go to Q school as I will be becoming a dad for the first time in my life. So I had some other priorities. So I set my life up like, I'm focusing on work, darts, doing some leagues, some tournaments. Don't practice a lot because there's not really a point to it on this moment. And all of a sudden, everything goes in. I don't practice a lot, not really, but the pressure is off, like a weight is lifted off my shoulders. Also in becoming a dad, of course, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, I feel free. So yeah, that's also, so yeah, you can see it in the game, I think, because I never had so many 180s and 170 finishes and yeah, like this 9-darter in my life. And it's cool to be looking forward when my first child is born to prepare to a strategic point in the future, what the plans will be, and yeah, I will be attending Q school maybe next year, but maybe year after.
So let's rewind back to the start for you in darts, and when you were young, around 9 or 10, was when we were seeing Raymond van Barneveld win his first world title at the Lakeside and the beginning of that darts boom in the Netherlands. So for you, how did you first get introduced to darts?
Yeah, just for me, it's the same as for many other youngsters in that moment. They saw Raymond Barneveld winning his first world title, and then darts came over to Holland as a tank. Everybody wanted to play darts, and it was such a hype. Every bar had darbos over there. There were dart shops popping out on every street corner, so you couldn't go around darts. You get influenced by that. Yeah, a couple of years after, I noticed that I was quite better than all the other players of my age. So I began winning regional tournaments, and then after I went national, international, and winning tournaments over there as well. So that was the start of my youth years, and quite successful on that moment.
Yeah, you definitely were. Let's fast forward to 2003 and you're representing the Netherlands in the WDF Youth Cups. The first of them that year was the Europe Cup. You helped your country win the boys team event. What was it like putting on that shirt to play for the Netherlands at such a young age as well?
Yeah, it was such an honour because as a youngster you see, like we told before, Raymond van Barneveld winning the world title as a Dutchman, and then the dream is to becoming a world champion as well. And on that moment there was only the World Cup that was seen as a world championship for the youth players. So that was the thing you wanted to play, to wear your national colors, to play in the World Cup and the Europe Cup. That was the dream. So I was really proud in wearing that shirt and also becoming a European champion with my teammates, and then after the world champion in the World Cup.
Yeah, you mentioned that World Cup. It was a few months later you were off to France for that, and in the boys singles you go all the way, win the title, and I think it was a month before your 15th birthday. So at 14 to win an event like that, how special a moment was that?
Yeah, at that moment I didn't realise it really, because I was just playing darts, having fun at it. And I knew I had the capability of winning a tournament like that because the level was there. I was playing high 90 averages in youth leagues all over Europe on that moment. So I thought I have the game to win this World Cup. But there was a good competitivity as well, because also Kyle Anderson, for example, Kim Huybrechts was also in that World Cup, but they were a couple of years older. And in that age class, that the couple of years older is a big difference. For example, if you're 17 or almost 18, in comparison to me that I'm 13 or 14 years old. So I was really happy with that result, of course. But it's pretty, after, in hindsight, if I look back, I'm really more proud on that win than on that moment itself.
Yeah, it's a big win, and even at that young age, did those successes give you that early belief that a career in darts could be possible? And where did it go from there as you're going through your teens into your adult life? Was the focus always on darts, or were you still juggling work at the same time?
Dart has always been a red line in my life. After that first World Cup win, I of course attended school, and I really had no struggles with learning and doing education. So I had quite a high educational level. So I've went to college and I finished my master's degree at 21st. I was 21 years old, I think. So that was the priority, of course, to have a steady basis. But next to that, I always been playing darts and trying to be in the best form I can be. But I had some struggles after that win as well, because all of a sudden you're a known person. Everybody wants to beat you. I think every dart player that has some successes can confirm that as well. That's quite a struggle, and for sure, if you're 14 years old, you have to deal with that mentally. So that was quite a struggle. But I've learned to cope with that a little bit. And then some other successes, not major successes came, but to be in a world championship, for example, that's for me, when I look back, was a major success as well.
Definitely. And we'll fast forward then to 2010, and you had that deep run in the World Masters in the BDO, getting to the last 16. But it's around this time you're starting to enter the Players' Championships in the PDC, the UK Open qualifiers as well. What were those first experiences like, testing yourself in those events?
It was quite difficult as well, because you have so many good players. So I quite struggle with the entrance. But if I look back, also I didn't struggle, because I quite early qualified for UK Open, for example, for European Championship in 2012, and for the World Championship of 2013. So the entrance in the PDC scene was quite good. But then, also yes, ups and downs. That's my career, actually.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned, 2012, you qualified for the UK Open, the European Championship, and that second one, the European Championship, you win through the first round. You have that meeting with Phil Taylor, who you said was one of your idols. What was it like playing against him on TV?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that game. If you look at Phil Taylor, you can only play your best game, I think, because you don't have to win. There's no pressure on yourself because he's the Phil Taylor. Everybody expects him to win. So I could play freely, and I think I performed okay on that moment. I had some chances to go in front. I went in front, I think 6-5 or something. That was the best score line. So I had some chances, and I didn't beat him at that moment, but it was quite close. It was 10-7, and for me, making debut over there, to keep up with him, that was quite nice. But I played him already a couple of times beforehand, and it was always a close game. So that's quite, for myself, I don't think he agrees with that, but we had some rivalry as I kept up with him in his games, even if he was in his best form.
Well, you said after that game as well that your next goal was to qualify for the World Championship, and you did that a few months later, and what a way to win on your debut, the 1-5-6 finish to beat Wayne Jones. What are your memories of that first time playing at Ali Pali?
It was just a dream that came true on that moment, because Every player dreams of playing at Ali Pali, and to win a first game 3-0 with a high finish like that, it was just euphoric. And I really can't remember the moment that well, only from looking back at it in videos. But on that moment, you're going through such a roller coaster and emotions. So it's really hard to remember that actually.
It's a special moment, and the next round it's another meeting with Phil Taylor, this time on the biggest stage there is. And although you did lose that one 4-1 in sets, you do finish the year inside the top 64, so you're on the tour for 2013. What did it mean to have that tour card and I guess professional status back then?
I think that was quite a victory for me. It gives you some comfort that you can be playing the tour. But in my opinion, I should have gone further on that moment. I should have gone putting in more practice hours, maybe looking for some mental health and a mental coach or something to prepare myself for that year, because that would be a really, really tough year for me. Within losing a lot of first rounds, that did my head in really mentally. So that's not good for your self-confidence as well. So I had quite a struggle the years after, because you had a target on your back as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, when the results aren't going your way, how hard is it to keep coming back to try and find that form? And you're in a field which is the best there is, you're up against the best players. It's a pretty tough place to be.
It's quite demotivating when you're traveling all over, and on that moment there wasn't like a scene like it is on this moment. You had to pay an entry fee as well. You had to pay for your hotel, for everything else. So, and I didn't have a management to support me like that, like financially as well. I had some sponsor, of course, that I'm really grateful of. But when you're traveling and putting in many pounds and euros and not winning anything back, that's really frustrating, of course, and demotivating as well to be traveling the next couple of tournaments when you know that your level isn't on the place it has to be to compete in those tournaments.
Well, let's get on to better times then. And without a tour card, we saw you back at Ali Pali the end of 2016. You won a spot through the Central European qualifier, and you instantly become a crowd favourite on the walk-on, dancing along to the music. You played the prelim and the first round on the same night that year. Did that take a lot out of you?
Yeah, it was quite a surprise, because I didn't have a tour card, as you mentioned. But on that day at the qualifier, it was my day. Everything clicked, everything went in. I didn't have any bad luck on my side. So it worked for me. And to play at Ali Pali again, the draw wasn't that good actually. The prelim round, okay, I beat Warren Perry, but then the first round, Peter Wright was awaiting me again. So every time I get to a World Championship, I have some great quality players playing against me. But it was quite an honor to play Peter Wright, and I had some chances. I lost 4-0, but he played a 104 average or something. But it was quite hard to play the prelim rounds, preparing. I was there quite early. Then winning a game, then your adrenaline level goes down, and then playing the last game in the evening again. So I had quite a struggle with that energy dividation on that moment.
And you touched on it earlier. Afterwards, you got to stand with Peter Wright for the post-match interview, and on Sky Sports here in the UK, we usually only see the winners interview afterwards, but you joined Peter and the now iconic line that you felt like a fish on the stage. What did you mean by that?
In every language you have some certain sayings, and in Holland we say, I feel like a fish in the water if you feel uncomfortable somewhere. So I meant to say I feel like a fish in the water on that stage or something in that region, but it came out like this. So I think it was quite amusing. On that moment I didn't notice what I was saying, so I looked back at it and really was laughing, and everybody keeps reminding me of it, but I really don't mind. I like to have some to laugh at myself for my own mistakes. I don't mind.
You took it in good spirits, and you've probably seen the clip by now as well. You wouldn't have seen it at the time, but the presenter here in the UK, Dave Clark and Wayne Mardle in the studio, it had them laughing as well.
Yeah, I know. I've seen that clip many times as well. Yeah, I spoke with a couple of those guys as well afterwards, and yeah, it was all in good faith and was in good laughter.
Well, sticking with the TV side of darts, and our Dutch listeners, they'll be used to seeing you on what was RTL7 and now Viaplay on their coverage of the darts in the Netherlands. So what's it been like working on that side of the game? And you get to work with the player that I call the GOAT as well, Coach-Stompe.
Stumpy. Yeah, he's a good colleague of mine. I've known him for years as well. But I really like working with those guys and really like to do the commentary and the analysis on the darts. Well, for RTL7 did a lot for me as well. But also now in this moment when Viaplay took over the rights to stream and broadcast the darts, I was really in good hands. So I really am thankful to them as well. But I really like working and doing like this. So what I mentioned beforehand, the darts has been a red line in my life. So I'm doing the commentary and analysis on television, playing darts just to have fun as well, and also selling darts products for a manufacturer. So I'm really enjoying life, and it's quite attached to darts.
Well, as a commentator and analyst, we should get your thoughts on the top level of the game, and the Premier League season's coming towards an end. We've just seen Gerwyn Price go top of the table last week, going above Michael van Gerwen. But who do you think is going to finish top? Will Gerwyn hold on to it, or do you think Michael's going to catch him?
Oh, that's a difficult one. On this moment, I really think Gerwyn Price is the player that has the best form. And if he's on this form, it's really hard to beat him. So, in my opinion, I think if he will continue this form, I think he will be at the top of the table. But the difficult thing is, in the Premier League, you have the final day. And everything can happen in one game on that moment. So, like Joe Cullen could have been the Premier League champion last year, and he wasn't top of the table. So, have we seen that for many, many, many years? That the one that finishes top of the table, didn't win in the end. So, in my opinion, I think Gerwyn Price has the best cards, but don't underestimate the other players, because everybody can beat everybody, as we have seen.
We shall see. Well, behind Michael, we've got Danny Noppert, who won a major last year. Dirk van Duijvenbode, he's making some big strides, well, setting that top 16 now. But can you give us some names from the Netherlands who perhaps we're not talking about that we need to keep an eye on over the next few years?
That we're not talking about. There are a couple of players, of course, that are doing, for example, the Modus series, like Brian de Vrede, Arjen Konterman. You have some young players like Owen Roelofs that are really coming up to the scene. Wesley Plazier, Danny van Trijp, more no names like that. But you have so many good players on this moment. And it all depends on how they develop themselves and how professional they want to see the sport. And if they do it in the right way, they have a good future ahead of them.
And lastly, back to you. You mentioned it earlier that this is a bit of a sabbatical year for you in terms of playing darts, but we do have the Euro Tour back in the Netherlands this weekend. Are you going to be entering the host nation qualifiers? And beyond that, have you got any other tournaments that you're looking to play in for the rest of the year?
For the rest of the year, I don't have anything scheduled, as I mentioned. My first child is coming, so that's a priority. The only thing I'm looking forward is to this host nation qualifier, because I could enter that even though I didn't play Q school. So I entered this tournament. I will be traveling over there with my parents, just like for like the old times, and I will just take my time and enjoy that tournament. And if I win, I win, and if I lose, no problem.
Well, good luck with the qualifiers this week. It'd be great to see you on that stage at least once this year. But good luck with the new arrival to yourself and your partner, Jerry, and wish you all the best for that and for what else is to come this year as well.
Thank you very much, Alex, for having me, man. It was great talking to you.
Thanks to Jerry for joining us this week. Now, we'll finish off with a pair of listener questions. First one comes from Nathan Barrington, and it's, which darts player that fell off the tour in the last 10 years do you miss the most? And I think we know who my answer will be.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to mention Mark Walsh. I'm sure I'm going to mention my GOAT Coach-Stompe, but I'll go beyond those two players. And I've got down a few names, actually. I was having to think about this question earlier, and one of them that I'd say is high up on my list is Cristo Reyes, and he just seemed like he disappeared out of nowhere, because he was someone that came out of nowhere in the first place, qualifying for Ali Pali as one of the international qualifiers, making the last 16 on his debut, and that run at the World Championship, it got him on the tour, got him in the top 64, and he ended up getting into the top 32. He had some epic games at Ali Pali. I remember that game with Michael van Gerwen around 2016, 2017 time, and at the time
he set that highest losing average in a World Championship match, the 106, and it was beaten a few days later by Raymond van Barneveld, the 109, when he lost to Michael in the semi-finals. So Christo, someone that we saw had a very high ceiling, but just seemed to, I think it was during the pandemic, we didn't see him play very often, and we've not really seen a lot of him since then after losing his tour card. So yeah, he'd be a player I'd like to see come back. I think he had a lot of potential and certainly a top 32 player, and I'd like to have seen how far he could have gone with that. Paul Nicholson, I think he's another one. We still hear a lot from him these days, very active as a commentator now, but at his pomp, at his peak, I should say, he was always fun to watch, an entertaining player, one of the characters in the game. I don't know whether we're going to see him make a comeback one day. He seemed pretty settled where he is with the commentary at the moment, but we'd love to see him make a comeback one day. A couple other players that we are still seeing regularly on the tour, and it doesn't feel like they've gone, is John Henderson and Jelle Klaassen. We saw Hendo on the Euro Tour at the weekend against Van Gerwen. Jelle Klaassen as well, we saw him play. They're still pretty active, playing on the Challenge Tour, getting into the Euro Tours and playing in various other events, but definitely two players I'd like to see come back on the tour. And one other player I'll give a mention to and is Alan Norris. And we saw what he was able to achieve in that run in the PDC after he switched over from the BDO, made that lakeside final, but won a Euro Tour, got to the quarterfinals of the World Championship, and a player that I really enjoyed watching. He had a good pace to the game. His throw was very easy on the eye. Sometimes he'd catch you out with some unusual routes for checkouts, but he was someone that wore his heart on his sleeve. The celebrations, he just looked like he had a real love for the game and loved competing against the best players. And yeah, one player like with the others, I'd love to see make a comeback one day.
I didn't realize you had stolen my notes for this question. I had Alan Norris, Christo Reyes, and Paul Nicholson all on my list. I tried not to do players who just fell off in the last year or two. So I didn't put Robert Thornton on the list. I didn't put Jelle Klaassen, who you mentioned, or John Henderson for that reason, because there's still every chance that they will bounce back in the next year or two. I tried to stick to players. Well, I guess I had Alan Norris, but he fell off a few years ago now. I tried to stick to players who it doesn't seem like will be coming back, or it doesn't seem likely they'll be coming back anytime soon. Obviously, Kyle Anderson, who passed away nearly 2 years ago now, also makes this list. He had already stepped aside from the tour at the start of the pandemic. Unclear whether he ever would have come back after the pandemic had he not passed away, but obviously well missed by everyone on the tour, as well as many fans, and a player that I wish we could still have with us. Some others that have fallen off a bit before that. Two of the best friends on the tour, but Andy Smith and Terry Jenkins. Andy Smith, of course, the Pie Man, was a top 20 player for a while, but as the game got a little bit tougher about a decade ago, he started to fall off, won a bunch of titles before that. Terry Jenkins, of course, always the bridesmaid, never the bride, losing 7 major finals. But I'll say just one more, going back, fell off just under 10 years ago now. But I remember watching him at the beginning of my time watching darts, and that's the original Heat, Dennis Ovens. I'll be remiss not to mention Mark Walsh, so I'll say and end with Mark Walsh.
Some great picks there, and we've got some more picks to make here. Our next question comes in from Warren Allsworth, who says, given the success of the Ryder Cup style USA v Canada clash at the Cross Border Challenge at the weekend, is this something that the PDC could implement? And if so, and it was UK versus the rest of the world, who are you picking as your 8-man team and captain?
First, I'm just going to take a little umbrage with the question. I don't know how we can call it a success when the U.S. won just 2 of the 15 matches over the course of the event. 2 first-round matches in last leg deciders. Of course, the only world champion there got defeated by an American. So have to take what we can get. But beyond that, it was just a brutal showing by the American octet. None of them making the semifinals. Only 2 of them getting past the first round. I'll leave it at that. That's enough giving credit to Canada for 1 decade, let alone for 1 episode. But yeah, who would it be if we did a UK versus rest of the world? I mean, obviously, just looking at, I think you have to go based on the rankings, at least for some of them. Yes, Peter Wright's struggling right now, but he's still the world number 2. So I think he has to be in that team along with Michael Smith, Gerwyn Price, Luke Humphries, Johnny Clayton, Nathan Aspinall. And then maybe you put 2 wild cards in with the top 6 that come in from the rankings. I skipped Rob Cross. So I'll leave off Nathan Aspinall and put in Rob Cross. But I think Aspinall would get one of those wild cards. And then who gets the other one? So many of them are playing well, but maybe you go Chizzy because he won a Euro Tour this year. So I'll give Chizzy the benefit of the doubt for having won a Euro Tour already this year. He gets that other wild card. On the rest of the world side, MVG, the highest ranked player from outside the UK. Then you have Danny Noppert, Dimitri Vandenberg, Dirk van Dijvenbode, Jose de Sousa, and Damon Hetta. And then who do you give the 2 wild cards for if we're doing the way I'm doing it? I think Ratajski just won an event. I think he gets one. And then I think you give it to one of the Germans, but I guess it goes to Gabriel Clemens because he made the semifinals of the World Championships. You end up with the top 8 in the rankings if we do it that way. And I'm fine doing it that way.
Yeah, I wasn't going to touch on the cross-border challenge at the weekend too much, given how it went for your guys. And as I touched on at the start of the show, I was away at the weekend, so I didn't get to see much of it. But I'm going to try and catch up on some of it this week as it was on their YouTube channel, which was good to see. And congratulations to Jeff Smith, because I saw that he won 16 consecutive legs on that final day to win it 5-0, 5-0, 6-0 to pick up the title. So congratulations to him. But to Warren's question, yeah, my picks are pretty similar to yours. I've had a look at the rankings and I'm going to go with Michael Smith to the world number 1 to captain the UK team. I've put Peter Wright in there, Gerwyn Price, Rob Cross, Luke Humphries, Johnny Clayton and Nathan Aspinall. That's 7 of the world's top 10 in there, so they're going to take some beating. But my wild card, I'm going to go with Gary Anderson as a legends pick, if you like, for that one. And I'm sure he'd love to be involved in this first event now that he is playing in a lot more events this year. And rest of the world, I think I've got 7 out of 8 that you've got there as well. I've got Michael van Gerwen as the captain, Danny Noppert, Dimitri Vandenberg, Dirk van Dijvenbode. And then I looked a little bit further down the rankings. I've left Jose de Sousa out for me, and I've gone with Damon Hetta in there, Gabriel Clemens, Christoph Ratajski. So you've got 3 of the national number 1s in there. And I've gone with a player that's won a title this year as well. I'm going to go with Kim Huybrechts as my wild card to spice things up, because we know when it comes to a team event, he can certainly be one to get people fired up.
That's very, very true. Anything else for this week?
As always, we have to say big thank you to our guests for joining us. To Jerry, good luck in the host nation qualifiers. Will be today when you're listening to this. Hopefully you can qualify. And to Tommy as well, thanks for the time, and thanks to our sponsor Dartwolf. If you want more Dynamite Darts content, head on over to dartwolf.tv. Give Dartwolf a follow at Dartwolf180. If you want a free case of beers, head on over to beer52.com/darts. Just cover the postage. And as we always say, thanks to everyone for listening. We'll be back next week. More Euro Tour action to review, more Premier League picks for me to get wrong as well. But until then, enjoy the darts.
Well, you'll be back next week. I'll be I will miss next week's show as I will be traveling next week. But I'll be there in spirit, and I'll make sure to get my picks in. Can't believe we're already 5/13 through the Euro Tour season. We're just a couple months away now from the cutoff of the World Match Play. World Cup's only a little over a month ago. There's a little bit of hanging tight, but not much, and a lot of darts to enjoy while we're hanging tight for everything still to come.